My name is Kjell Ekorn. I'm a graphic designer and an image maker. I'm living on an island outside Oslo. I think when I was growing up, I just knew that I wanted to have something to do with art. Because I loved drawing and I loved visual stuff. Non-format is myself, and it's John Force. I still can't see you. Oh, there you are. Cheers.
Well, we've been working together for 7 years when I decided that I was going to move to the US. It was a worrying prospect. As it turned out, technology has really allowed us to work together. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I love the winters here. I love the snow. I love the cold. It's about extremes. You know, I like the extreme cold because it forces you to put on a big coat and a hat and to make that decision. And I'd rather that there were spikes of weirdness thrown in there somewhere. And I think it comes out in the work and it comes out in where I live. Non-format is two people's brains bashing together. That's really all it is. It's just two people playing around with stuff and seeing what comes out.
We met in London in the late 90s. We started off just doing collaborating on some music packaging projects and some book jackets.
And as soon as we realized that what we created together was better than we were creating separately, that's when we knew we had a business. That's when we knew that we were onto something.
When we first started up, we got the Wire magazine, and after 3 years of designing it, we really found our own voice.
Sometimes you work on something and you don't know whether it's good unless somebody else points at it and says that's good, especially if it's someone you trust. We got very used to that dynamic. So when I moved here, when we moved apart, we had to make sure that we could replicate that as best as we could. So,
did you send something more?
Yeah, I just sent you a screen grab of this thing.
InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop has been, our staple diet for the last 15 years or whatever.
One of the things we do, of course, is share files across the internet. Kjell finishes his work when I get up in the morning, and then I have the opportunity to carry on working on them. So when he wakes up in the morning, it's like the little elves have been working overnight, and there's something for him to see.
The aesthetic of non-format is quite minimal, it's quite stark, and it's quite emotional.
We tend to favour black and white over colour. We like to simplify, just keep it to the absolute core elements that you need. Real extremes of form, so we'll have something that's incredibly heavy against something that's incredibly light. And that tends to be a recurring theme, if there is one.
We are definitely thinking about the audience that we are communicating to, but we are also making sure that we make something that we think is strong. Non-format has a bigger ego than Kjell and John, which is what I like. We have a kind of... Non-format is the ego bit. That's the one we don't want to let down. We don't want to let down non-format. When you have this kind of honesty with each other, it creates a trust, and you know that when somebody is arguing for or against something, they really mean it.
I'd find it incredibly difficult if I couldn't work with Kjell. We're lucky that we trust each other so much, I think. And it's not just that we've decided to trust each other. We have built up the trust over a decade.